How's it going?
Oh, it's going spectacular. Yeah, couldn't hardly be any better, actually.
That's great
Almost
news.
scary. Almost scary.
Awesome.
So
Good to
that's
hear.
good. How are things with you?
Really, really good actually. Just happy, everything's going pretty decent.
Okay, outstanding.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's see. Are we ready to get this show on the road? Or are we up and running already, or what are we doing here?
No, we're up and ready to go right now. You can start talking at any time. I pulled up Enoch, but I have the version that you first mentioned. I can't find the other one. I know I have it, I just can't find it.
The
But
Charles?
yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. There.
I have that one, but it's fine. You can read yours and I'll just follow along on mine. It's fine. It's no big deal. And I have the Epistle of Barnabas open and the Ascension of Isaiah and the guidebook for the elect, just because it mentions Enoch, just in case we need references.
Yeah, I mean, you can riff off of that all you want. What I was really wanting to focus on this evening was just kind of an overall view of how to, I think, approach the Book of Enoch, how to read it and really appreciate it for what it is, um, to be able to actually use it,
Right.
because ultimately that's what this is all about, to actually be able to take this information and put it into use for the time. There's been a couple of reasons I think I haven't, I wouldn't say I've avoided using the Book of Enoch, or explaining it or going on about it, but because really a couple of things. Number one, I think I look at it in a way that a lot of people would probably struggle with.
Mhm.
I thought I'd have that problem with the Book of Revelation when I did that series with Carol. I thought I'm approaching it with such a different, you know, a different viewpoint that I think that some people might struggle with it. And also because it was time sensitive. No sense really jumping the gun, because this is a document that's supposed to be actually used and utilized at a particular time, when people, I think, are ready for it, which it explains in and of itself. It talks about itself being, for that particular day and time.
Mhm.
What we've talked about before was its validity, I guess, the way in which it's attested to throughout the scriptures, throughout the New Testament. For example, Jesus alludes to it quite a number of times, in terms of the way he describes the underworld, for example, parallels, sections of Enoch. And so in other words, this book is kind of for a particular time, and so it's really for an inflection point in history, which I think we're quickly approaching in terms of people, how shall I say, um, I guess in this world, I think, wondering what's going to happen next. What's the next step? Where do we go from here? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so when you're looking at things as profound as, let's say, world collapse, or the collapse of a mm, connected, if you will, say, network of, I should say, people and entities of various sorts, that that control things behind the scenes. They're there. You sort of, see bits and pieces of it, but there's a whole thing you don't see behind the scenes.
Right.
And so people are coming to recognize that, things aren't just at the surface level. And so I think people's minds are sort of at readiness to, well, if Babylon, let's say, is on the verge of collapse because people aren't buying their quote unquote merchandise anymore, and their witchcrafts are wearing off, and the spells that they cast, if you will, of delusion or whatever, that people are becoming more and more aware of the facade. And so as that begins to unpeel, and the mask sort of falls off, you know what do we have to fill the void? What's there, to fill that vacuum? And that's essentially what this book touts itself as. as sort of this fulfillment of a hope, the fulfillment of that promise that we will be transformed. That and again, a lot of this is about transformation,
Right.
not just of human beings, although it does say that we will be transformed. It's very like the book of Revelation. It's very explicit about our transformation into um, our next form, which is
Hmm.
to be like the angels. It's explicit about that in the same way that Revelation, in the same way that Jesus is explicit about that. They have all of these touch points with one another and all these intersections with one another, and it's really only when we can properly um, accept this book as authoritative that we can actually implement the information, and we can actually take and do with it what it tells us to do. And so,
I've always kind of wondered why we don't, because Enoch was like the leader of the world, and all the people went to him for wisdom back in the day. Like when you read it, it clearly shows that they wanted him to be their leader because of his wisdom. So it's weird that people that are Christians today don't read that and understand that. I mean, I know it was meant to be that way, but it
well,
just now that it's open, it's strange they still say it.
well, let me back up, because
Sure.
I don't want to come at it from the point of view of he was an authority or so and so was an authority. Well, what I like to think that I can do is open up people's eyes and ears to things that are there, and
Mhm.
cause a recognition on the level of the spirit that these things are true and not based on some kind of authority or whatever. Um, I like to think that someone who is even an unbeliever, if they were to listen carefully to what we're talking about here, and actually see the features that exist and how they unlock, and how they show things in there that we couldn't have known and couldn't have seen until the right day and time. That's
Right.
why I feel like in this particular instance, I think I'm going to get a little bit into the nitty and the gritty of it, and approach it from um, like an expository point of view, and just sort of read it line by line. That's why I kind of wanted to focus on just chapter one, and then skip over to maybe 101 through 105, because those are the sections that most directly speak to us across
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
so they form why are we doing this? Why is this important? What is actually going on? That we need to get a grasp on that before we start delving into some of the other issues that this book brings up.
Mhm.
um, so, I mean, with that, I would just like to read chapter one briefly, the first paragraph. I'll go further down, but I just want to read this first little bit. I think you know why, because it spells out, what this is and what our approach to this book is supposed to be. Um, so with that, I'll start it out. The book actually says it itself. It starts out, the words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one, which is for to come. Concerning the elect, I said, and took up my parable concerning them. So, a couple of things. Number one, just stating the obvious, it calls itself a blessing, and it calls itself a parable. It refers to itself as being not for a particular time, but for another time. So you have to kind of ask yourself, how does this achieved? How do you have a book that's meant to be given to us at a particular time for us to see and to understand, and yet kept from us, all at the same time? And I think that the language of parables, among other things, but the language of parables is one of those things that keeps us from seeing. When Jesus was asked why did he speak in parables, he said that so that they could hear without hearing and see without seeing. To not get the gist of what's there. so that things could be hidden from them until such a time as they were to be revealed. And like everything else in the scriptures, there's a higher level meaning and there's a surface level meaning. The surface level meaning is oftentimes referred to as the earth, or put in terms of earth or earthly or worldly. Sometimes other metaphors are used, the surface of, the face of, those kinds of things. They sort of hint at seeing things on a surface level, seeing things from a superficial point of view, a flesh and blood point of view, as opposed to an upper level or a higher level or a heavenly level, let's say. So when he's talking about the elect and righteous who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and the godless sort of be removed, clearly when people read this book, a lot of them are seeing this in terms of, okay, the coming of the flood, right? That it's a book for its time, that all of this, all of the goings on that you see here sort of spoken of are, that the book is sort of self-reflective and for its own age. And yet you see this book alluded to, like I mentioned before, by Jesus numerous times, by Paul several times, and by Jude explicitly, by Peter in Second Peter, loosely. And this book is well attested to by the people who wrote the New Testament, well respected, well understood. But there has to be a mechanism for keeping this book out and for then reintroducing it into the canon.
Could I ask a question real quick, Robert?
Yeah.
Just briefly. In the super gospel, Jesus is speaking and he says that the seven-hilled Rome will be destroyed or something like that. And so I was just curious, we know that the Vatican has a lot of books in their library. Do you think that perhaps when they find out that there will be proofs in the Vatican library? So I'm just wondering if you ever thought that, and just conjecture in your own mind. Do you think that might be some type of the mechanism or something, or where they realize Enoch was hidden from us this whole time?
Rome is sort of like again, I can really only speak to things probably from the parabolic aspects, because for whatever reason, that's kind of what I feel like is my contribution in all of this. I don't consider myself to be, a prophet or archaeologist or what, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if I.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I know the way you think. You always think on the higher level, which I wish that I could think that way all the time. It's very difficult.
Well, but in any case, the idea that that the Rome of the Seven Hills or whatever, I mean, actually, that's what Rome was spoken of as having been built on seven hills or whatever. That was kind of in its geography.
Well, the only reason I mentioned it is the only reason I mentioned it that way regarding the super gospel is because Enoch 1:6 says, "And the high mountains will be shaken, and the high hills will be laid low, and will melt."
Yeah, that was kind of what I was. Yeah, I was kind of working towards that, because this is when Carol and I did the Revelation series. The first thing we did, the first chapter, we kind of went over how everything was in signs and in symbols, because in the book of Revelation it talks about to signify these things, right? To signify, in other words, to put things into signs, signs, signals, images, that kind of thing. And everything in here is in terms of keys and in terms of images and in terms of, you might think of it as patterns, you might think of it as understandings or whatever. But like I said, I don't know if I want to get too much into the weeds of it, but mountains are like high places on Earth.
Yeah, I know. I have the keys. I have it written down. That's what I was mentioning.
Well, I mean, and there's good mountains, if you will, and bad mountains, if you will, that are spoken of throughout this book. For example, the symbolism can refer to, like, for example, it speaks of the mountain in the center as being God's throne. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, a mountain isn't necessarily bad, but one that's based on the earth, like, for example, Rome, for example, or any of the other countries that you might think of, Egypt or what, to think of mountains in terms of those countries or those entities or whatever, they're speaking symbolically. These have to do with earthly kingdoms, and that's why the high mountains will be shaken and the hills will be made low.
Well, I have people that are not Christians that read that verse, like Like, for instance, the verse that says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain or something like that. They think that's literal, that you could move an actual mountain. And I tried to tell them it's a metaphor. It's speaking of these
Well,
things. So
and that's the difficulty that I run into, because I know that to try and just read this as a parable, people want to read it so many other ways. And like I said, I'm not here to step on anybody's toes. I'm just here to
right.
give you my perspective.
All right. Well,
And all that
I'm gonna stop talking now, and you go through this the way that you wanted to, because I know what you're trying to get at, and I'm just gonna shut up so you can say it,
yeah,
because I know you
the
don't.
thing about it is you got to be thinking about certain things along the way as you're reading it, and you have to think kind of a certain way. And so
Mhm.
again, you have to have ears that hear certain things, and you have to have eyes that perceive certain things as you're reading them. And so I'm here to kind of show what I think is there, what I can demonstrate is there. So I don't like to think that I have beliefs per se. I guess I'm a little old fashioned. I'm a little bit too objective, I think, for a lot of people who are highly subjective, and yet I have views that are very different from a lot of people who like to put things in concrete terms and see them at the surface level. I'm
Mhm.
always trying to see through things. So in other words, I'm trying to give people kind of like X-ray vision to see through the images, and maybe to see something that's beneath the surface, or something that perhaps corresponds to something higher.
Mhm.
This is the language that he used. He took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God. Again, to see things spiritually, you always have to sort of parenthetically preface whatever you're doing with the idea of spiritual in front of it. If you talk about physical eyes, like physical eyes are mentioned here, but we know that when somebody says your eyes were opened, right? We know that they're not usually talking on the physical level. Yeah, I mean, if someone cures somebody's blindness or something, definitely on the physical level their eyes are open. But we speak to each other metaphorically all the time. If you said, "Oh, so and so said something," and my eyes were open, right? In a general sense, in a figurative sense, you're talking about the eyes of your insight, your perception was changed, something about you transformed.
Mhm.
And so when you come to recognize that something has two levels of meaning, a temporal meaning and an eternal meaning, one that is in prospect, one that is in retrospect, one which focuses on the surface, and one that focuses on the depths, one that focuses on that which is below, that which focuses on that which is above. In other words, you could couch it a million different ways. You could say that it's ambiguous in a way. That's a word I kind of hate to use, but in a way it's kind of revealing. You read it one way and it drags you down, and you read it another way and it lifts you up. And the idea is that I'm not saying, oh, you should believe this. I'm saying if you recognize this, you'll catch on. And once you catch on, then you're able to find things, what I'm saying? So you're able to stand up on your 2 feet, so to speak. In other words, you're not helpless. You're able to work with your hands now, because you're able to actually act upon this information. And we need to, I think, as a people at this particular moment in time, especially, as a lot of our delusions are passing away, we need to start thinking and seeing things on a higher level. It's becoming imperative, because again, when Babylon falls, there has to be something there to fill the void. And what I'm trying to point out to you is that there most definitely is something here that is designed to fill that void, that is designed to, as one thing falls, another thing arises. you know and so again, when he says, I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come, concerning the elect, and took up my parable concerning them. The last three words there, the parable concerning them, this is about us then. The wicked are still here, the godless are still here. And it's not really referring to his own time, because how many souls were saved? Just eight, right?
Yep.
So they weren't the quote unquote elect. That's why the book is still, with us, and still, the wicked is still with us, or whatever. That we're supposed to use these insights. That we're supposed to use this book in order to remove them. So a lot of what you're going to hear is going to sound a little on a different level than probably what you've been hearing other places or whatever. But in either case, let's just move on. The Holy Great One will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal God will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai, and appear from his camp, and appear in the strength of his might from the heaven of heavens. So the idea is that there's going to be a shift from the heavens down into the earth, right? The Holy Great One, his holiness is going to come down upon the earth, and again upon Mount Sinai, that is to say his holy mountain, his holy kingdom on this earth. He's going to appear with all of his angels, his entire truth, in other words, his entire entourage. There's going to be a movement of his people, his army, his truth, his kingdom down upon the earth. Now, one of the ways that you can see this, and one of the ways that you can understand this, is that the earthly meaning is transformed and taken over by the higher level meaning, by the logos, by the word of God that comes to us at the end of time. That in a way, that is one of the ways in which this happens, that this manifests itself upon the earth in this way by the earthly taking on the heavenly meaning. And it says, and all shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers shall quake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And again, they'll get into the watchers here in a minute, but we all know who they are. I mean, they're of course are the angels who came down, and etc. So, but the idea is that they have a weakness, if you will, and this is at the root of their weakness, is that heavenly level meaning coming down to the earthly level and undoing the earthly level meaning that they have pushed. That, in other words, their foundations. And again, this isn't just with the watchers themselves per se. This is with all of the earthly institutions, all of the high hills, in other words, all of the mountains. Well, it even goes on to say that all the entire edifice, the entire Babylon, from the time of the inception, but from the time that the watchers, if you will, came down and started polluting mankind and polluting the works of man and all that comes down to us, even to our time, right? So in other words, the ends of the earth metaphorically, and you'll see this several places in the book of Enoch, where you talk about there's the east and there's the west, there's the north and there's the south, in the four corners or whatever. These are like the ends of the earth. In other words, the beginnings and then the middle or whatever, and then there's an ending, right? So these are like the, if you will say, the borders or whatever, the ends of the earth. And like with time, for example, east and west. So east has to do with like where the sun comes up, and that has to do with beginnings, right? And then west has to do with where the sun sets, and that has to do with endings, right? So when you see things moving towards the east, you recognize them as referring to things that are earlier in time, or a shifting of focus or whatever to beginnings or to earlier things.
And
then,
just cutting in for 2 seconds, if anybody wants what he's talking about, there is a list of the keys and what Robert's talking about at scriptural-truth.com. And go ahead, Robert.
well, anyway, so, and then of course things that are moving towards the west or tending towards the west, for example, have to do with endings or towards the end times, or towards the finality, right? Because west has to do with endings or with conclusions or things of that nature. And then you have north and south. North, generally speaking, has to do with God's kingdom, or sometimes even his judgment or his wrath. But they have to do with things emanating from God and his will. And that's why, for example, one of the I ams or I wills, I'm sorry, that Satan utters is, I will, sit upon the sides of the north, right? Mm-hmm. Which is to say he's going to sit in God's place, as if he were. And things that are towards the south, generally speaking, have to do with with evil things, with the kingdom of Satan, and etc. I mean, people, and even in the English language, when you say, "Oh, things have gone south" or whatever, you know, kind of what that means. It's these are just common everywhere. You know, what I'm saying, everyday kinds of terminology that we even use ourselves. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So it's not that this language is really unusual. It's almost as if you should know this. And that's what makes it particularly interesting, is because how simple it is, you know.
Hmm.
And again, you have to have the mind of a child. The way
I
in
was
which,
just gonna say that.
yeah, the way in which these mysteries are hidden from us is that they don't jump out to the scholarly, because the scholarly person is like, oh, look how qualified I am, oh, look how smart I am, oh, what a great authority I am, oh my god, you know. And so obviously that's not going to be the way that the truth is ever going to be revealed. It's going to be through the children. That's why the elect, who come at the end of time and are naturally the youngest of all of the, you know, of the furthest west, let's say, or the, you know, the furthest towards that end of time, the last being first, etc. They're always referred to as the children, because they approach it a little bit differently. They approach it with the mind of a child rather than the mind of the scholar or whatever. And so they're able to recognize simple things, and give God credit for maneuvering around these eggheads, you know, these you know, experts or whatever. Even in his day, he was always confounding the so-called experts of the law or whatever. But
Yep.
again, the mountains shall be shaken and the high hills shall be made low, and the earth shall be wholly rent in sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be a judgment upon all men. Okay, so what does he mean? The earth will be wholly rent and sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and shall be a judgment upon all men. Well, okay, so if the earth represents the earthly, and all that is upon the earth represents all that is founded upon that which is earthly, or that which is below, right? So the fact that it's rent in sunder, again, in the proximate meaning, in the immediate prophecy or whatever, that probably has to do with the breaking up of the ground for the, you know, coming up of the flood, you know. But in the sense of our place in time, how we're supposed to receive that, right? The idea is that just like right now, how we're kind of parsing between what it says on the surface and what that means on a higher level, or in a deeper way. It means that the earthly is going to take on, if you will, a different aspect. It's going to separate, if you will, from the lower level meaning, and reveal
Like the difference
from
between the two, like the difference between the two and the three, like the, you know, like from the Gospel of Thomas or whatever, like they only understand the canon, but once you understand all three and how they are really one, like the Trinity, like is one and three.
well, if you understand that the heavenly is conveyed in the earthly,
Yeah,
right, then you go from a one level earthly meaning to a double meaning,
right.
so that it's rent asunder in that sense, because now it has gone from something that limits your ability to see to something that opens up the door to your ability to see, you
Mhm.
know, so that you have the ability to look at upon and recognize the higher level meaning. Because again, the heavenly is couched in the earthly, that the treasure is kept in earthen vessels, so to
Mhm.
speak. In other words, because it's identity, because the higher level meaning is embedded in the lower level meaning. If the idea of the people of this earth who found everything upon this earth, in other words, this earthly understanding, this earthly meaning, right, the way in which, you know, Jesus the man, if you will, is emphasized rather than the logos, or the higher level meaning, you know, is emphasized. That it drags you down, that it causes you to live on the earth. In other words, everything you believe is founded on an earthly, fleshly level understanding, and so you conform to the earth, or that you or even live under the earth. That is to say, that you're subject to the earth. And that's how the devils live. This because they're bound by the curse, if you will, that they have to push the lower level meaning. So they have to push the other for them to be forced to push the fleshly level meaning means that they're bound by it, that they're in a way subject to it. So they're in a sense bound by that earthly level limitation. They can't speak about the higher level meaning because that gives it away and that spells their doom. And so they're limited to that lower level meaning. But again, here's where the promise comes in. It says, with the righteous, he will make peace and he will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them. So as Babylon falls, as this entire charade comes crashing down. And again, the book of Revelation is very specific about this. You know, they don't buy your merchandise anymore. They don't see, you know, and this is where you're really kind of starting to see this happen on a worldwide basis. People are turning against, you know, quote unquote, the system, the man, corruption, whatever you want, you know, insert your particular worldview here. But people are losing their faith in institutions, and they're losing their, those institutions. This is a dangerous time, because those institutions are now kind of at the point where it's like, okay, now it's like, oh, the jig is up. We don't even have to act like we're trying anymore. You know,
Right,
this is us.
right.
This is us against them, and we're going to bring out the big guns. And so again, we're starting to see the beginnings of that. And so I think this is where you're starting to actually see that removal, which is, I think, why it's important to bring this teaching up at this particular time, because this is there to fill in that gap. This is there to fill in that void. So again, this is why he's saying that with the righteous, he will make peace and he will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them. Because again, when that thing falls, there's going to be something to fill in that vacuum. And that is the higher level meaning. That is the teaching of the elect. And it says, and they shall all belong to God and shall be prospered, and they shall all be blessed. So this is basically taking victory from the jaws of defeat, so to speak. And he says, and he will help them all, and light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace with them, right? And again, what is the light? Again, the light is that which illumines, obviously, you know, but it has to do with, if you see things in the flesh, you kind of walk in darkness, I guess. You see in shadows because you don't know what the meanings mean. So everything is kind of dark and shadowy and murky to you, so to speak. I mean, this isn't, it's not unlike the imagery that we use all the time in poetry and in music and in everyday parlance and stuff. You know, we talk about, you know, what is light and what is darkness all the time, and you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of the same rules as you see in poetry and in music and everything else. It's the same almost sort of symbolism, but in this particular instance, the light is the higher level meaning of the scriptures, because the light shall appear unto them, right? And he will make peace with them, right? And then this is where it intersects with Jude 14 and 15. This is an exact quote. And it says, and behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So again, this is our call to action. You know, we are called essentially to execute judgment along with him. That to do his will is to convict all flesh of the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. You know, so our place is to counter all of this and to be part of the, if you will, the overthrow of all this.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Mhm.
Barnabas 4:3, the last offense is at hand, concerning which the scripture speaketh, as Enoch saith, for to this end the master hath cut the seasons and the days short, that his beloved might hasten to come to his inheritance. So it's exactly what we're doing right now. We're living this right now. The last
Well,
offense.
this is the inheritance. The inheritance is our birthright, the double portion, if you will. You know, the lower and the higher. That we get the actual light, if you will, of the spirit.
You think that's the Jacob in Israel type thing, like where he wrestles with the angel? Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It's the double portion.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it then kind of shifts gears, and it talks about the everything in the heavens and the luminaries and stuff. For right now, I just wanted to skip over that and
Yeah, I'm going to 102.
move on down to yeah, hang on a second, 101, I think, is where I wanted to start.
Okay.
Because again, I wanted to focus on our place in this. And I don't want to necessarily focus on, we'll do that some other time. I'll get into that hopefully soon.
No
But I
worries.
wanted to point out what our role is, because that, I think, is the preliminary thing for all of us to recognize that we have a role to play in this, and that it's an active role, and that for those of us who are fighting on the level of the flesh, I'm not saying that going against things in the world of politics or in the world of whatever, that's necessarily bad in and of itself, but that'll only get you so far. Satan cannot cast out Satan. There isn't a political solution. There isn't a governmental solution. None of
Well,
that stuff.
I remember the disciples asking Jesus, how do we do, I think it was in the Nag Hammadi Codices, how do we defeat the fallen angels, or the archons, they said. And he said, by doing this, by preaching the true gospel, that's how you defeat them. And you said that at the beginning of this show. So that's what we should be doing, is to defeat them with the word, the sword of the spirit, not by, the earthly thing you were talking about. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, let's start with 101. Let's just kind of read it a little bit, and I'll kind of delve into it as I see it. Okay. So it says, "Observe the heaven, ye children of heaven, and every work of the Most High, and fear ye him, and work no evil in his presence. If he closes the windows of heaven and withholds the rain and the dew from descending on the earth on your account, what will you do if he sends his anger upon you because of your deeds? You cannot petition him, for ye spake proud and insolent words against his righteousness. Therefore ye shall have no peace." So again, he talks about peace for the elect and no peace for these people who are doing evil in his presence, right? So he's got judgments coming for these people, and that well, he develops it. He says, and see ye not the sailors of the ships, how their ships are tossed to and fro by the waves, and are shaken by the winds, and are in sore trouble, and therefore they fear, because all their goodly possessions go upon the sea with them, and they have evil forebodings apart, that the sea will swallow them, and they will perish therein. Okay, so that's an interesting parallel to Jesus and his disciples on the Sea of Galilee.
Hold on.
Mhm.
You see it? That's
Yeah.
Jesus. That's Jesus with the disciples on the Sea of Galilee.
Oh
Right
yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
go ahead.
anyway, no, that's great. But okay, but see, what I'm telling you, sometimes the thing is, you got to look a little bit between the lines, because you see the winds, you see the waves. We've talked about this, I think, before, you and me, about what the winds are and what the waves. Like where Paul says, "Be ye not blown about by every wind of doctrine," right? When Jude talks about these people who have infiltrated the church, he talks about them as being wild waves of the sea, foaming up their own
Foaming out
shame.
their own shame, yeah.
Okay, and James also talks about the waves too. These people are unstable. And so the idea is that the waves are people who are the evil teachers, bad people within the church, and the winds are the false doctrines. That's why when he's able to still the winds and the waves, right? People are amazed, like, why, how do the winds and the waves obey him? Who is he that the winds and the waves? This has to do with the way in which the future church, or the ship, if you will, of the church is going to be shaken, if you will, by the winds and by the waves. The infiltrators, in other words, those are the waves, and the winds, of course, are the doctrines. And it says, "Are not the sea and all of its waters and its movements the work of the Most High? Has he not set limits to its doings, and confined it throughout by sand? And at his reproof it is afraid and dries up, and all the fish that dry up within it." Again, what is the sea? One of the contrasts that you see throughout the book of Enoch, one of the parables that's used quite a bit, is the sea and the dry land, right? Every time you see the word sea, it generally is referring to people whose foundation is upon the word, like the water of the word. Those people who live in the sea are those who are part of the church, or perhaps by extension part of Judaism, the Judeo-Christian, because it refers to all of his people from the beginning. Really, those who feel themselves how shall I say, grounded in his word, so to speak. In other words, those are the people who live in the sea, if you will. The fish of the sea, for example, very specifically, I believe, refer to Christians. Like in the Gospel of Thomas, where he pulled out a whole net full of the whole net full of fish out of the sea. I mean, and then he found one giant large fish among them,
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say that because it says, and all the fish die, because apparently they're the wrong fish. They're the little fish. He kept the large fish for himself, so that's the
Well,
one true doctrine.
they're all the different kinds of religions,
Right,
all the different Christianities,
right.
right?
Denominations.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas the fine large fish is to recognize the big picture, right? To recognize that it's all one big thing, you know. Um, which again, I'm just saying that the similarities in the parables, and again, this is what I'm trying to point out, is that it's using the same parables that the New Testament is using. It's using the same parables as the canonical scriptures are using. It's using the same symbolism. And so this is where you kind of recognize that whatever your feelings about this book, even if you consider it a work of fiction somehow, or of dubious origin perhaps, the one thing that it has going for it is that it unravels to the same keys that all of the stuff that you do believe in, like all of the canonical scriptures do. It uses all the same keys. So whatever your thoughts about it, you have to bear that in mind. In the book of Enoch, winds and waves are the same as they are in the Gospels, the same as they are in Jude, the same as they are, throughout. I kind of glossed over it, but the rain and the dew, for example, descending upon the earth,
Mhm.
right? Again, the idea that the earth has to do with the earthly meaning. Okay, so in other words, by itself, it tends to dry up without the word of God. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yep.
if rain has to do with water, if essentially coming from above, revelation of scriptures from above, let's say, if you just see it that way, to water the earth and to cause the earth to bring forth. I mean, it has to do with scriptures coming down from the heavens to bring life to, in other words, spiritual understanding, insight to, to bring alive that which is dead, or bring alive that which is nearly dead, right? And then the dew, one of the things is I sort of struggled with some of the differences in, like, what does dew mean and what does rain mean and what does, what I'm saying, because it uses all of the symbolism. And one of the things I used to kind of like to do, I used to like to take pictures with my phone. I still kind of do. I don't really have the time or the opportunity. They went and, paved my paradise and put up a parking lot, so to speak. And so I don't have as much, but I took advantage of the time that I had. But one of the things I like to do is I got this little macro lens that I put on my camera. And I used to love to just take pictures of things that my eyes could not see, or I could barely see, and you take something minute, like a tiny flower that you would never look at, and you could, I could get as close to it as I could and take a macro picture and blow it up in the macro picture and then come back and look at it on my big screen TV or something. And holy cow, was this, sometimes it was just unimaginable beauty that I saw,
Right.
and always amazed me that there was so much detail to be had by blowing things up and looking at things, that ordinarily you wouldn't see, right?
Right.
And so that was, to me, aesthetics is another path, if you will, to the divine, if you will, you recognize the perfection in nature. Really, the perfection exists in all things, but it's particularly striking in nature sometimes how beautiful things can be and how full of details they are, or even that, for that matter, getting close to things, how fragrant they might be, or any other aspect to them, all the way down to the minutest details. But one of the things that I used to love to do is take a dew shot, to go with a camera out there to get a good shot through a
Oh yeah,
dew.
I saw that on some of your flower pictures.
Yeah, well,
A lot of
anyway,
pictures.
but it dawned on me one day that when I was looking at a dewdrop, they act as natural lenses. They act as natural magnifying glasses. You could look at something like, I don't know, a blade of grass, a flower, anything that's got a dewdrop on it, and just look at it, right? And you notice that parts of it are magnified. And then I thought, oh, That makes sense. The do if you okay, anybody who's done like sentence structure, like you do this in elementary school or something, or you diagram a sentence, for example, and you take the sentence and you break it apart and you have little branches, if you will, or what I'm saying.
Yep.
If you sort of liken the idea of do as being something that's localized and magnifies on something, like in other words, if you took a sentence or a clause out of a sentence, like I don't know, let's say out of the book of Enoch or whatever, and you're able to expand on it and you're able to break it down and magnify on it, sort of dilate upon it, see it a little more clearly. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It occurred to me that what that do was doing was it was taking a teaching and bringing it clearer, bringing it to you a little maybe more clear, like a little more localized. You know
Oh,
what
that
I'm
makes
saying?
sense.
But it would just appear on the structure itself. So whether it was a flower or a branch or whatever, if there was, it just would happen to appear wherever it was. In the same way that a word or a meaning, you can suss out a little bit more out of that meaning or whatever by focusing on it and lensing it a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? And so I see that symbolism as being kind of apt, but you know what I'm saying? But in other words, there's so much to learn from every little thing that you're reading, that you really can't be careless, and you can't read it like just super fast and be all glib about it, because there's literally so much there in everything that you see,
Hmm.
you know. But anyway, not to get all on that, but my
No, no,
emphasis
it's
really
fine.
here
I
is
actually,
that.
I
Mhm.
just oddly enough, I was trying to find Enoch in the vision of Paul because it is in there one time when he goes to heaven. But you were just talking about the do, and it's in the vision of Paul as well. All these keys are in every single book that I've opened up. They're all over the place.
Yeah, that's the unifying factor, is that all of these books, and again, anybody who's read 101 through 105 knows where this leads. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the idea is that the fish die, right? What does that mean? What is life and what is death, right? We talked about this in Thomas. We talked about this in other places. It's a spiritual life and a spiritual death, right? To say that the fish die and that it dries up or whatever, just you can see where the word disappears, where the Christians themselves lose their spiritual life and become spiritually dead. You know what I'm saying? You can see the symbolism.
Yep.
And all the sinners that are on this earth fear him not. Why? The sinners who dwell on earthly things, who dwell on the earthly understanding. Has he not made the heaven and the earth? In other words, not just the earth, and all that is therein, who has given understanding and wisdom to everything that moves on the earth and in the sea. Do not the sailors of the ships fear the sea, yet the sinners fear not the Most High. But again, you're seeing the symbols, the sea, which is like basically the Christian
Can I read?
age.
Can I read this from the vision of Paul real quick? It's just a quick
Yeah, go
paragraph.
ahead. Yeah.
It says, "The souls, therefore, of the just, when they have gone out of the body, are meanwhile dismissed to this place." And he was talking about the Oceanus. "And I said to the angel, then this land will be manifested before the time. The angel answered and said to me, when Christ, whom thou preaches, shall come to reign, then by the sentence of God, the first earth will be dissolved, and this land of promise will then be revealed, and it will be like dew or cloud. And then the Lord Jesus Christ, the King eternal, will be manifested and will come with all his saints to dwell in it. And he will reign over them 1,000 years, and they will eat of the good things which I shall now show unto them." That part about the 1,000 years is obviously in the canon, and then the dew and the clouds and all these keys are within this one paragraph, and it's a huge text.
See, and that's just it. See, you just see it. See, it's just
Right.
there. See,
Right.
all the people who are listening, if you get what we're saying, then you're getting ears to hear. If you see what the patterns here, then you're getting eyes to see, right? So in other words, we're delivering to you substance, right? It's something substantive. It's something real. It's something that you can then take and utilize, and you can go and find it in all these other places. And so what is inspired by the inspiration, by understanding what inspiration is, I guess would be probably the easiest way to say it. And what I'm hoping to demonstrate is that at least on the level of parable, everything that you see in the book of Enoch tracks according to these parables, by expressing them in the same way, and indeed by seeing the interconnectedness between, say, this book and not just the New Testament. There's tons of intersections between this and the New Testament. Some of them are very explicit. Some of them are kind of deep level, like like what we were just talking about, the winds and the waves or whatever. You just have to see that winds and waves together mean something, and
Right.
so when you see winds and waves together other places, it all kind of like, it tells it like this over here, it tells it like that over there, but they're all talking the same language, right?
Right.
And so that's why this can take fire with people, because there's only so much you really need to know, a few paradigms, a few keys, and you can take the ball and run with it, which is a little bit surprising why this hasn't gotten more and better legs than it has. But I think that a lot of it is because there's a lot of ways that you can get trapped in lower level arguments and lower level, issues
Right.
that I think,
Well,
unfortunately,
that's what's happening right now. If you go on like TikTok or some of the other channels, people are arguing about things that are really very unimportant. And I agree with what you're saying. If they get into the trifles, it's going to keep them in the trifles instead of moving them on to the higher levels that
yeah,
they
and
should.
and that's the thing, I'm just trying to illuminate what I know. I try to let
Right.
my yay be yay, my nay be nay. There are a lot of things I don't know about, and there are a lot of opinions I keep to myself because,
Right.
frankly,
I
the
have a hard time doing
rumors.
that, Robert. I really have a hard time doing that.
Well,
You do.
there's so much here that's unleavened. There's so much, like what I'm trying to tell you is I'm trying to show you where these things intersect and what their meanings are.
Right.
Um, so again, he's sort of toggling back between the promises for the elect and the curses upon the unjust and the godless and whatever. It says, moving on to 102, it says, in those days when he hath brought a grievous fire upon you, whither will you flee? And where will you flee for deliverance? When he launches forth his word against you, will you not be affrighted and fear? Because again, what is the power of this word? Well, I mean, first of all, the book of Enoch, it's there to be utilized at the removal of the wicked and the ungodly, right?
Right.
So this word is obviously going to get flung at him when he launches forth his word against you. Think about what that means. Like what we're doing right now, trying to shed light on these meanings, trying to make lights out of every one of you that's listening, trying to give you eyes to see and ears to hear something that is both old and new, it has been here all along, saying what it says, meaning what it means, holding the mysteries which it holds. And only now are we able to look upon this at the end of the age, again, when Babylon is falling, etc., and be able to utilize this stuff. And again, they should be affrighted because, see, because they're con artists. Now, again, I don't discount the power that they have, because these people got their fingers on the button right now, even as we speak, and it's
Right.
not limited to them. I mean, they're in the church, they're in the schools, they're part of the warp and the woof of this whole thing. So they're firmly entrenched and in every place, right? It's very sort of, how Satan cannot cast out Satan.
Right.
They're sort of a united front. And even when they're pretending to do what's right, they're just, something's going on over here, something else is going on behind the scenes that you don't know. You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
it's smoke and mirrors. It's not like legit. You know what I'm saying? And so, but this is legit. This is something where you can actually say, hey, this works. This just does. Okay, so this is why they should be frightened, because not only are we bringing, their governments or whatever to account, not only bringing our institutions perhaps to account or seeking to, um, but we're also bringing the word of God into this and the judgment of God into this. And so this is becoming kind of cosmic in a way, kind of a whole lot bigger, uh, really kind of fast. And so again, this is good. This is good news. This is us being able to probably make a difference in our lifetimes, if we act on this, which I think we will, because if we were not
Well, we
to
are.
speak, the
We're
rocks
acting on it by
themselves
doing this.
would cry aloud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Things are
Yeah.
going to happen. you know and it says, and all the angels shall execute their commands and shall hide themselves from the presence, and shall seek to hide themselves from the presence of the great glory, and the children of the earth shall tremble and quake, and the sinners shall be cursed forever, and you shall have no peace. Again, that runs sort of parallel with, remember in Revelation, where they're like, hide in the mountains and in the rocks, and, you know, say, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne. You
Yep.
know, it's sort of the same thing. This is where, this is basically brown trousers time for these guys, you know, which as it should be, as it should be.
I never heard that before. That's pretty cool.
But anyway, so fear ye not, ye souls of the righteous. So again, he keeps going back and forth, the comparison, the contrast, right? The souls of the righteous, and be hopeful, ye that have died in righteousness. Okay, so before we get too much farther, you know, like in Revelation 6:9-11, I think it is, where it talks about the souls underneath the altar,
Yep.
right? Those people, if you're reading something that is being decoded, right? It means it was encoded. If you're reading something that somebody wrote down, you're reading, but they were writing. All right. So if you have a mind to understand revelation, right, then they doubly had a mind to write it down.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? This mystery existed then.
Right.
All right. So why don't you hear about them? Why don't you hear about them? Because they were covered up. You know, we live in a day and age where I could look at something one day on the internet and it's been scrubbed the next day.
Yep.
And you think, oh my, in this day and age where anybody could copy something, download it, save it, re-upload it, put it there. Why is this so hard to stay one step ahead of the lying and the censorship and stuff like that? You know, so to me, it isn't hard to believe that the martyring of these people was because they did know the truth, and that this truth was dangerous to those who lived in that time. And they represented then an existential threat, just as those of us who will come to understand this will also in our day represent an existential threat to the establishment through this knowledge, through the recovery of this knowledge. Because what is implicit in this is that people who knew this mystery wrote this mystery down for us. Many of them paid the price. Many, if not most of them, paid with their lives. You know, so we really kind of are in their debt. And so this little section here is kind of speaking to them. You know, what did they do? It says, fear ye not, ye souls of the righteous, and be hopeful, ye that have died in righteousness. So we are the souls of the righteous, let's say, if we're seeking the truth, but they were those who died in their righteousness. And grieve not if your soul into Sheol has descended in grief, and that your life and your body fared not according to your goodness, but wait for the day of judgment of sinners and for the day of cursing and chastisement. Because again, how long, O Lord, you know what I'm saying, and say the people under the altar, you know, will you not judge these people, right? So they're long suffering.
I don't want to go way far into it, Robert, but do you know how many Christians don't understand that Jesus went down to the underworld during his time in the tomb? And it says clearly right here in Enoch that the souls went down into Sheol. That's David, Jeremiah, Isaiah, who all had prophecies that are in the canon, but nobody knows what those prophecies mean because they don't accept the gospel of Nicodemus. You know, all these things have been covered up over time. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and all of those things too, they all occupy a certain metaphorical space, you know, as well. There's meaning to be gleaned from that as well, symbolically. But yeah, and grieve not if you're in the Sheol, your soul has descended in grief, and that your life and your body fared not according to your goodness, but wait for the day of judgment of the sinners and for the day of cursing and chastisement. And again, I'm sort of reminded of the rich man and Lazarus here. So just kind of keep that thought in the back of your mind as you're reading this. And yet when you die, the sinners speak over you. As we die, so die the righteous. And what benefit do they reap for their deeds? Behold, even as we, so do they die in grief and darkness. And what have they more than we? From henceforth we are equal. But that's, again, the Lazarus was being comforted in that place. And he was in the bosom of Abraham. And you know, the rich man was not. And the rich man is this age. I mean, generally speaking, when he says he has 5 brothers, that means there's 6 of them, right? Him plus 5 more,
Right.
right? So he symbolizes the age of 6,000 years,
Right. I know it. I
because
can see that. Yep. Can just see it.
so,
Feel the same.
but anyway, but you see the parallels here.
Mhm.
And it says, and what will they receive, and what will they see forever? Behold, they too have died, and henceforth they shall see no light. And yet there was a light, and there was a fountain. And I tell you, sinners, you are content to eat and drink and rob and sin and strip men naked and acquire wealth and see good days. Have you seen the righteous, how their end falls out, that no matter of violence is found in them till their death? Again, because they give themselves up passively. They knew that they were sacrificial. That, and the thing about it is, you know, I mean, in no way, unless we are willing to face up to the end that they faced. What I'm saying? We
Yeah.
obviously have to lower our eyes to them. You know what I'm saying? We obviously have, to give, to recognize them for their sacrifice, not only their sacrifice but their works,
Yep.
because they worked hard to make these things known to those of us in a future generation, knowing that there would be an interim,
Well,
knowing.
we know that Peter and at least Peter and Jude knew that this would happen because they wrote that third letter that combined. So they were writing in code. They knew they were going to probably die. So and all the disciples probably knew that. They must have known it.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, if you combine the letter of Jude with the second letter of Peter, there's a way to combine those things to make one letter out of them. And I've got several examples of that on my website, or I'm sorry, well, also on my website, which is run, of course, by Jesus Love 723, entirely on his dime. So, if you go over there and you enjoy that website, you can help him out with that. But also on the Apocryphal 1970 YouTube page, um, where you can see the actual text of this book, that they've, the combined text of
Mhm.
Second Peter and Jude. And that's very revealing because, why can you do these things? But that's just an example of some of the works that we can do as people who come across this mystery and start thinking in holistic ways, to start thinking in wholesome ways, that makes sense when everything is taken together. Like, one of the reasons I wrote the super gospel or whatever was just as a way of illustrating that you can take all of these sources and combine them, and by and large they would all agree with one another, and that the whole thing would just become a greater and greater and larger mystery, and that you could grow in that knowledge, recognizing that, well, you have this and this and this and this and this, and instead of contradicting each other like you'd think, they build on each other, and that they, shed light on each other, and that, you can kind of go there for one-stop shopping of, like all of the Christian teachings in linear form, what I'm saying, in the framework of a harmony. But it illustrates a larger point, that there's something beyond just these documents themselves. There's something beyond it, and so this agreement between Enoch and Jude and the Gospels and all of this other places where you see it's left its impression. And you can see also where the keys themselves open up the same way, in all of these sources, that you recognize that there was a spirit that had been poured out at the time, that was known by people, the elect of their time, and that those are the people who left this up. So again, they left this stuff for us. So in other words, you got to kind of pour one out for these people, and give them, their props, because this is what they did. And again, we've entered in upon, other people have labored, and we've entered in upon their labors,
Mhm.
so they are to be thought of more highly than us, certainly. What I'm saying? So again, that's so we see ourselves in our proper light. We understand that we were given something, so that, we don't get the big head and get puffed up about it.
Right.
That we realize that these people, if you realize the mystery, then you recognize the sacrifice, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If your eyes are open, recognize that there are people who wrote in such a way so that they would be open. So
Right.
again, you owe one to them. But again, Now, therefore, I swear to you, the righteous, by the glory of the great and honored and mighty one in dominion, and by his greatness, I swear to you. And again, stop and think about it. By his greatness, right? The idea is that for you to be reading something on two levels, right? For you to be seeing a mystery that's been hidden away, that hints at his greatness. That gives you a sense of that, a very tangible reality that is the reality that that he has made. That the same universe that exists with the restoration of the mysteries and the restoration of the scriptures and all that, which is a miracle, which is miraculous, and it demonstrates that God calls the end from the beginning, and that he controls the end from the beginning, and that he, you know what I'm saying, these are illustrations and very concrete examples of how that is true. So now you know that you live in reality, and that reality consists of a God who can do that. Therefore, everywhere else you look in reality, no matter who it is or where it is or what it is, that all is under his purview. So you understand the greatness of it. You know, he is one in dominion, right? Like it says here, he is the great and honored. And anytime you see the word great, it always means greatest or to the greatest extent. You know, and that's true in the book of Revelation, the great whore of Babylon, or, you know, the great, you know, whatever. It has to do with the ultimate of something. It has to do with its greatest extent, you know. I mean, and again, it sounds like I'm stating the obvious, but if
No,
you
I don't.
recognize that this is a teaching, right? You recognize how it's a teaching, I guess, then it becomes revelatory to you. And that revelation, of course, the gaining of eyes to hear, or eyes to see and ears to hear.
Can
And
I
also,
read
yeah,
one
no,
thing?
go ahead.
So this is going to be two parts, but it says, this is from the book of the secrets of Enoch 22:3. And who am I to tell of the Lord's unspeakable being and of his very wonderful face? And I cannot tell the quantity of his many instructions in various voices. The Lord's throne is very great and not made with hands, nor the quantity of those standing round him, troops of cherubim and seraphim, nor the incessant singing, nor his immutable beauty, and who shall tell of his ineffable greatness and glory? Pausing, and it says, this is what you just said. This is verse 8, chapter 33. For I created all forces, and there is none that resists me or that does not subject himself to me. For all subject themselves to my monarchy and labor for my sole rule. And that's good and bad angels and everybody in between. It doesn't matter. They all work to the glory of God.
Well,
Sorry.
and that's exactly right. Because see, people sometimes ask about, well, you know, do you have free will or is everything predestined, right? And that's a tough one to answer, but from a certain point of view, it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense that there's not a contradiction. I mean, and that would be when you recognize that God has willed that the evil should exist and run its course. And if you accept that at the end of this course, he's got a time bomb ticking for it, which is this knowledge, which are these books, which is this information, which is what those people who died laid down for us, the mystery that they spoke at the time that was covered up by the people. Again, backing up just a little bit, these people were saying what I'm saying. Okay, I mean, you know, but they, you know, they say loose lips sink ships, and people would find out what these words were. They found out what these mysteries were, and they knew they had to suppress them because they knew the implication. They had the power to destroy the world. That was why when the first manifestation came of the Spirit, where everything was speaking about the Son, the testament of the Son, everything, because again, there's the teaching, there's three dispensations. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And in the well, anyway, in the first dispensation, there's all the information about the subsequent two. And so it contains within itself pattern, like in the Ark of the Covenant, where there's three symbolic items and whatnot. It presages all of this stuff, and it lays it out so that you know there are going to be three revelations. We've had two, you know, and the paradigm shifted, for example, from the old concept of Judaism to recognizing that within those scriptures there was spoken of the son of David, or the son of man, or spoken of differently, but
My father works and I work, like
yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. In other words, but then there's a further revelation. And that's one of the paradigms you have to recognize in these scriptures, is that there is the coming of the teaching of the Spirit, that's the third dispensation, and it's of things old and new. In other words, all of these books are ancient,
Mhm.
and they're new to us. But again, we're seeing them with these new eyes and these new ears and stuff. So getting eyes to see and ears to hear and so on. So again, when he says, uh, and by his greatness, I swear to you, I know a mystery and have read the heavenly tablets and have seen the holy books and have found written therein and inscribed regarding them. Okay, so let's stop and think about it. The heavenly tablets, the waters above in the heavens, right? The water of the word, the tablets are words, the idea that they're up in the heavens. You know what I'm saying? They're in a way, they're sort of interchangeable. The water of the word and the tablets, the things that are written above. So if you understand what is written on the heavenly aspects of things, right, then you can understand the holiness that are in the books, and that that you can see the way he see and understand as you see the way he did, because again, it's all in parables. But he explains that through this knowledge that you can recognize that all goodness and joy and glory are prepared for them, right? Because again, if you're decoding, they were encoded. And that encoding was the preparation that was made for us, right? And it continues, and written down for the spirits of those who have died in righteousness, and that manifest goods shall be given to you in recompense for your labors, and that your lot is abundantly beyond that of the lot of the living. Because again, you and me at this age, we are the living, because
Mhm.
the scriptures have come alive in us. They have awakened our spirit. But the reason why they are above us, and this is structural, is again because they died in righteousness.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? So we are indebted to them. So their
Right.
lot, again, they will have a glory above us for sure,
Mhm.
considering that. But again, that's no great shakes. I mean, we understand that we're the people, at the ends of the road, called at the end, but he will in a sense give us the same reward as them. But again, the reason why is because this is with reference to those who wrote these things down for us and for our benefit.
Mhm.
And the spirits of you who have died in righteousness shall live and rejoice, and their spirit shall not perish. Again, because their spirit is alive in what they've said too. That's another aspect of that. Nor their memorial from before the face of the great one unto all the generations of the world, which includes ours, right? And from before the face of the great one. That means that when something is before your face, it means you've never taken your eyes off of it. It just has to do with the fact that everything he's doing was with an eye on this, right? Everything he's doing is with a mind to that. So even though it says, like I was saying in Revelation, that the souls underneath the altar, were asking, how long before you exercise judgment or whatever. Again, he's never taken his eyes off of these people. Their memorial is before his face, right? So don't fear their contumely, or don't fear their criticism or their violence against you. In other words,
Mhm.
woe to you, you sinners! When you have died, you die in the wealth of your sins. And those who are like you say regarding you, blessed are the sinners, and they have seen all their days. Um, and now they have died in prosperity and wealth, again, like the rich man and Lazarus, and then not seeing tribulation or murder in their life, which again is kind of the message that that's given to the rich man, that you saw good things in your life, whereas Lazarus suffered,
Mhm.
right? So again, this runs parallel with the rich man and Lazarus still. It says, and they have died in honor, and judgment has not been executed on them during their life. Know ye that their souls will be made to descend in Sheol, into Sheol, and they shall be wretched in their great tribulation. Which again, he was in pains, he was in tortures, right? So again, it's just another example of the same thing. So that's another touchstone between this and the canonical. And into darkness and chains and a burning flame, where there is grievous judgment, shall your spirits enter. And the great judgment, which again, the great judgment has to do with the judgment of all things, everything, because again, great means to the greatest extent. So there's a certain finality to it. Shall be for all the generations of the world. Again, just underscoring that. Woe to you, for you shall have no peace. But again, they got woes waiting for them. Say not in regard to the righteous who are good in life. In our troubled days, we have toiled laboriously and experienced every trouble and met with much evil and been consumed and have become few in our spirit small. And we have been destroyed and not have found anyone to help us with even a word. Again, we have the words now. And we have been tortured and destroyed and not hope to see life from day to day. Again, day to day. A day is a time of understanding. Like we are the children of the day, right? We are not children of the night, right? Because again, day and night is another one of those parabolic understandings. If you are a child of the day, if you walk by the day, in other words, it has to do with the fact that you have the light of the knowledge, you have the light of the spirit. And so from day to day means that from their enlightenment to our enlightenment. And we hope to have been the head and have become the tail. We have toiled laboriously and had no satisfaction in our toil. And we have become the food of the sinners and the unrighteous, and they have laid their yoke heavily upon us. Again, because they were persecuted again at the beginning. And they have had dominion over us that hated us and smote us. And to those that hated us, we have bowed our necks, but they pitied us not. And we desired to get away from them, that we might escape and be at rest, but found no place whereunto we should be safe from them. And we complained to the rulers in our tribulation and cried out against those who devoured us, but they did not attend to our cries and would not hearken to our voice. And again, voice is another one of those keys. When you hear the voice of something, it has to do with how you hear something. You hear something in a certain voice or with a certain, I don't know, you hear it in a certain way. Like, for example, if you understand that something is being spoken of in a parable, the surface level is a certain voice. That's the voice that the average person hears, which is the surface.
The voice crying out in the wilderness.
Well, yeah, and again, John demonstrated the knowledge of the keys as well. And when Jesus spoke to him, his speaking to him assumed that he understood that language, because you could see all the back and forth between them. They're talking in this language, so it's clear that Jesus acknowledges that he understood it, and John also is demonstrating a knowledge of it. He calls them a generation of vipers, et cetera, et cetera. He does speak in that language, but that is the voice. The voice is the voice is like the language, I guess. To hear it in that voice. What was that Moody Blues song, The Voice? A little bit like that. And they helped those who robbed us and devoured us, and those who made us few. Right? Who's he talking about? They helped. See, this is where the church was Judas. This is where the church was Cain. This is why comparisons to Cain exist in Jude, for example.
The axe already laid at the root of the tree. All the early people got killed.
Yeah, well, they were the people who knew the mystery, and they were martyred.
Right.
And it says they helped those who robbed us and devoured us, and those who made us few, and they concealed their oppression. Again, they're not going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, we silenced these people."
Yeah.
They did not remove from us the yoke of those that devoured us and dispersed us and murdered us. In other words, they did away with this mystery, and they hid it, and they concealed their murder, and remembered not that they had lifted up their hands against us. In other words, they're the forgotten ones, right? And so this is their plea, this is their cry for judgment, right? And this is, in a sense, we are there to vindicate them. We are there to demonstrate to the world their contribution and their sacrifice, and we are the beneficiaries of it. Okay, and so it continues in 104. And I swear to you that in heaven the angels remember you for good before the glory of the Great One. and your names are written before the glory of the Great One. Be hopeful, for aforetime you were put to shame through ill and affliction, but now ye shall shine as the lights of heaven. Ye shall shine and be seen, and the portals of heaven shall be opened up to you. And in your cry for judgment, and it shall appear to you. For all your tribulation shall be visited on the rulers and on all of those who helped those who plundered you. Be hopeful and cast not away your hopes, for ye shall have great joy as the angels of heaven. What shall ye be obliged to do? You shall not have to be idle on the day of the great judgment, and ye shall not be found as the sinners. And the eternal judgment shall be far from you for all the generations of the world. And now fear not, ye righteous, when you see the sinners growing strong and prospering in their ways. Be not companions of them, but keep afar from their violence, and ye shall become companions of the hosts of heaven. Again, you be among the myriads of angels, those who live in heaven, those who live in above. In other words, your source is there. And although ye sinners say, all our sins shall not be searched out and written down, nevertheless, they shall write down all your sins every day. Again, just as we're exposing their sins now, about the way that they snuffed out the mystery and stuff like that. All that stuff's written down for our benefit and to condemn them when the day comes. And now I show unto you that light and darkness, day and night, see all your sins. And again, he's talking about, like, as it pertains to our time, not to sound too Orwellian, but when you talk about the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness, of course, is this world, of the flesh. And the kingdom of light, of course, is the world of the spirit, the lower versus the higher, the day versus the night, the curse versus the blessing, the woes versus the beatitudes, or whatever, all of the positive versus all of the negative. But, our sins are recorded both on an earthly level and a heavenly level. You know what I'm saying? When you think about the way that your sins are tracked on earth, like you could think about maybe the way that you may have a record of this or that or the other, like a criminal record or something, or in the ways in which all of your internet activities are, monitored and preserved maximally. There's always the eye in the sky watching you, so to speak. There's always there's always the night keeping track of you, watching you, like the watchers, figuratively speaking.
Right.
There's so in other words, if even down below, even in the night, or even in the darkness, right, your sins are written down, how much more so in the heavens, I think, is the point. And all of this stuff is being written down in this book for their condemnation. But here's where it gets interesting. It says, and now I know this mystery, that sinners will alter and pervert the words of righteousness in many ways, and will speak wicked words and lie, and practice great deceits, and write books concerning their words. Right? That sounds an awful lot like Christian and Jewish history.
Yep.
Where they, well, first of all, as far as altering and perverting the words, you don't have to actually change the words exactly. You can just dwell on their literal meaning. You can just dwell on the surface level meaning, and that by itself is a distortion. That by itself is, whether you realize it or not, it could be intentional, or it could just be that you're passing on what you know or whatever. But de facto, it is a lie. It is a deception. It is an alteration, because it should be understood on the higher level and not the lower level. So regardless of whether it's intentional or not, it is a distortion. And so again, and this is, again, just not to beat a dead point here, but the idea is that they're speaking regarding their own words. That sounds an awful lot like schools of thought, schools of religion, etc.
That thing you were talking about of everything being recorded, it's also mentioned in the Ascension of Isaiah, verse 23, chapter 9, says, in truth, there is nothing hidden in the seventh heaven. And that's God's throne. So he sees everything night and day.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the emphasis here is that, nothing that you do is hidden. Everything is taken into account. That's why, if you got something against you, you need to go and get that settled before you bring your gift before the
That's a great
altar.
point. That's a
But
great
it
point.
says, but when they write down truthfully all of my words in their language, and do not change or diminish aught from my words, but write them all down truthfully, all that I first testified concerning them, then I know another mystery, that books will be given to the righteous to be and the wise to become a cause of joy and of rightness and much wisdom. And to them shall the books be given, and they shall believe in them and rejoice over them. And then shall the righteous who have learned therefrom all the paths of righteous uprightness be recompensed. So that is a mouthful, but I mean, for anybody who's listening, you probably understand that, you know. But for those of you in the back of the class, what it means is that these books that we're reading right now are giving back to us in the sense that we understand them and we can use them and we can articulate them and we can relate them to other books, and that they're it isn't just that the lines between the canonical and the non-canonical are blurred or whatever. It's just that you recognize the mystery direct. So you can already tell by reading something if it decodes, for example, that it was encoded. So if, for example, Enoch is one of these books, that's to be returned to us. Again, not for his generation, but for a remote one. So it's to be restored to us, right? So again, so I know another mystery, that books will be given to the righteous and the wise to become a cause of joy and uprightness and much wisdom. And to them shall the books be given, and they shall believe in them and rejoice over them. Again, because they are wise, they believe them basically because they understand them, and they rejoice over them because they recognize that this is the sword that comes out of his mouth, so to speak, the testament, the revelation, the dispensation that comes at the end of time. When Elijah comes and sets all things right, or when the Spirit comes and leads us into all truth, those kinds of things. That's the third revelation. Okay, and that's for us in our time on the seventh figurative day. That is to say, after the 6,000 years, according to biblical chronology anyway, have come to pass, and we are on that cusp even as we speak. And it's a recompense, it's a reward. In other words, after all this time, after all of this suffering, there's finally a light at the end of the tunnel. The fog finally clears, the age finally dissipates, the mystery is revealed, and the lie disappears, the illusion is gone. I'm saying? However you choose to represent that in your own thoughts, it's an awakening. And that's the recompense, kind of in a nutshell. But it says, in those days, going on to 105, in those days the Lord bade them, that is to say, the wise and the righteous, right, to summon it and testify to the children of the earth, that is to say, the earth has brought forth children. So in other words, it's transformation, it's a transformative thing concerning their wisdom. In other words, you're taking it away from the earthly level, right? The children of the earth, and bringing them to the heavenly level, creating children of heaven. It says, concerning their wisdom, show it to them, for ye are their guides and a recompense over the whole earth. Again, the earth is rent in sunder, that lower level meaning separated from the higher level meaning. For I and my son will be united with them forever in the paths of uprightness in their life. So in other words, it's for him, for the Jews and the Christians and all of us too, will be united forever in the paths of uprightness in
That's
their
like
lives.
that's what he said to Peter on the Mount of Transfiguration. Like he doesn't want three tabernacles; he wants one tabernacle for all the
Right.
Christians, the Jews, and the elect.
Yeah, and you shall again, and you will, and for I and my son will be united with them forever in the paths of uprightness in their lives, and ye shall have peace. Rejoice, you children of uprightness. Amen. So again, the children of uprightness teach the children of the earth, who then can thereby become children of wisdom, children of uprightness. It's a conversion. It's a transformation. See, the thing was when Jesus was on the way to Emmaus with those people, first of all, their eyes were being held. And this is symbolic of his walk across the age, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. And their eyes were being held. Well, in the same way that you don't see the parables until it's time, it's the same way. The logos is there, but you don't see it. You don't recognize it. And yet everything was about it, right? And so at some point when you see it, what happens to the flesh? It disappears.
I was just gonna say that's gone. Yeah.
Well, doesn't that make sense now that you think about it? Why does that? See, so in other words, all these things, why do they happen? Why does he disappear? Well, because the fleshly level disappears.
Right.
See what I'm saying? Once you recognize it, he transcends that. And you realize that what you were looking at, real as it may have been, is transformative. It goes from the level of the flesh to the level of the, you see what I'm saying? And so in other words, you can understand things and see things now because you understand the keys. And so that's what makes them useful, is because you actually have that wisdom in your hand to reveal to them. Just like it says in the Gospel of Thomas, let there be a man of understanding among you. You know, when the crop was ripe, he came sickle in hand, right? Because it's supposed to be, it's supposed to happen like an awakening, you know, like a healing. You know, every time he healed somebody's eyes, somebody's physical eyes, of course, as we've discussed a million times, it's his spiritual eyes too. It's a parable about other things. It speaks beyond itself. And so everything that is couched in the earthly is always speaking beyond itself. So once you recognize that, then you become transcendent of the earthly. The earthly, in a sense, disappears. You know, just like Jesus in that parable, because it is in effect a parable, because now you understand why. You know, and so I mean, it's just things like that that make the understanding of this book so useful, because this is so direct and it's so well attested to as well. You know, again, like the quote in Jude literally is, Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these men, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones, etc. The idea is that he's literally saying, he's citing the name of the source, he's giving it its antiquity, right? He's giving it its importance as prophecy, you know, and then he gives a lengthy quote so that you can identify that quote represents that book. So he's made an airtight case as far as reading this book. If you're a believer to begin with, you should be taking him at his word. And if you're not a believer, then you might want to look at, why do these patterns exist? How is it that this mystery just, I mean, look at some other religion. Can they pull a rabbit out of their hat, so to speak? I mean, is there something there that they can point to that's on par with this?
No,
It'd
and
be
in
interesting.
fact, even the Muslim religion is currently being dissected to the fact where they're realizing that in their own text it says, in order to find God, you need to read the Christian Gospels and stuff like that. So I mean, that's disseminating on its own over there too.
Well, yeah, I you know, as far as what's going on, I mean, it's just in general,
Yeah,
they're all
it's everywhere.
wrong.
It's everywhere.
In general, well, in general, this is the thing that liberates you from religion.
Right.
One of the reasons I don't pick on any particular religion in particular is because I don't want to let any of the other ones off. If I
Right.
start poking away at this one or that one, then everybody's like, good, I'm glad he's getting them and not me, or whatever. You know, the
Right. Well,
truth is everybody's missed it. And that's
it's First Corinthians 1:25. The foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. By the fool, this I'm reading your writings. By the foolishness of God, Paul is letting us know that some scriptures are going to be regarded by men as foolish, but they will nonetheless be of God, who by his superior wisdom can make them wiser than the men who judge them foolish. Sorry.
no, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, the thing about it is, anybody with any kind of sense would realize that, again, if the words carry a double meaning within themselves, and that looking at a lower level meaning, you know, hearing a certain voice, right? The voice of the flesh, the voice of concrete understandings of things, right? Very literal understandings of things, right? That all of those ideas, again, be it whatever religion or whatever, you're just talking about things themselves, right? but this is an illustration about how these things are talking beyond themselves, and beyond themselves in such a way that you can apply it across board. You know,
Right.
it'd be interesting for me to see if any of these features exist in any of these other writings, although I've never seen them, you know, as far as that's concerned. I've looked a few times, you know, but that being said, this clearly is transformative, you know, like I said before, not only to the individual, but the words themselves transform in such a way that the Bible literally becomes a sword, it becomes a weapon. You're able to take down people who don't have a name, who don't have a voice, who don't have who don't who who aren't able to articulate what you're able to articulate, who aren't able to see what you're able to see. You know, again, not that you're targeting them, because you're trying to open the eyes of the blind, you're trying to heal the spiritually lame, you're eating the spiritual food that they're laying before you. Like, let's say they lay the 66 books before you or whatever, you know what I'm saying, you eat from
Then
what
you can
they
go to First
place
Corinthians.
before you.
You go to First
Right.
Corinthians and show them that, and then this is what it means, and then they're like, oh, it's in my own Bible, and then they read the other stuff. I'm like, okay, and then they start to realize it all matches, it all comes back around.
Yeah, but that's what we've been equipped to do.
Right.
That's kind of the long and the short of what I wanted to just talk about today, is what is our role in this, and why is it that it's important. Again, there was a time sensitivity issue, which kind of, to me, it's kind of like, okay, you know, it's time to do this.
Right.
I don't want to be super premature with this, because it needs to come at a time when the people are ready to act, you
Mhm.
know, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we're quickly approaching that time. And
No, I
so
do too.
people, you need to be able to take this information and do something with it, to actually hear what it is telling you to do and actually do it.
Well, could
But
I say something real quick? I was just at work yesterday, and a banker came to look at the house I was working on to, tell us we completed certain things so she could pay the homeowner or whatever, and or pay my boss. And she had gone to two different churches that I had gone to as a kid, West Congregational and Island Pond Baptist Church. And we were talking and stuff, like she lived where I went to Christian school as a kid, and we started talking. And as I'm telling her all of these things, the three testaments, everything, you should see her face light up. You can see it in their face. They're like, oh my gosh, wow. And just that little bit, it's like you can see people like coming to life really in their face. It's wonderful. I love it.
that's what it is. That's what's great about it. Now, here's the other thing, though. I mean, my experience with people has been kind of that, but it's also been like, I'll tell them something, and then I'll never hear them bring it up again, or you know what I'm saying. But
Right.
it's for some people, I think, and not others.
Yep.
But like I said, as we're getting towards that time, right, when people are actually now starting to look around and be like, what's next? You know, you know, because times are uncertain, you
Well, I think
know.
I think the religious and the scientific priesthoods that have been over us as a people are now crumbling because of everything going on in the world. And I guess maybe you've seen it because we're doing this now. So I know I've seen it myself.
Well, anyway, so, but the point is that I think now is the time to pull the trigger on the Book of Enoch, as far as what is its function.
Mhm.
People, I think, need to focus on the parabolic aspects of it, because that's where this really helps us. Because to whatever extent that you want to study ancient archaeology or ancient angelology, or you know, cosmology, or any of the other issues that are going to come up in this book, right, you have to understand that it's always speaking beyond itself, and that there's always something there to be gleaned out of it. It isn't all surface level, you know. And so you have to get it in your mind that there is a spiritual level to every bit of this, and that however much you want to see it on the level of the flesh, that it isn't limited to that. And so what I want to do is try to suss some of that meaning out, so that, you know, it can be useful to, you know, the body. Because again, like we just read, if you know this mystery, it's incumbent upon you to share it, you know, to show it. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, that's the book telling us to do that.
Well,
That's God telling us to do that.
the Gospel of Thomas one of the sayings says, I will give you what no eye has seen and what no ear has heard and what no, and all these things. And then in here it says the story of Ahikar 7:27. Oh, my son, you have been to me like the pig who went into the hot bath with people of quality. And when it came out of the hot bath, it saw a filthy hole and it went down and wallowed in it. And that's what Jesus is talking about the pigs, the false Christians, the 2,000 pigs that fell off the cliff and the demons were cast into them. That's these 2,000 years where the false Christians have run the show. And that is ending now because we are in the third day, the Sabbath, which is the seventh day since Adam, but also the third day since Christ. So we're living in the time when this has to take place because Enoch prophesied that it would. And like you said, we are now speaking about it. So it's fulfilling its own prophecy as we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. It's the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. It literally, the higher level meaning is infused in the lower level meaning, and in a sense, Satan was stuck with it. That's what's interesting. It's got to bother him that he knew he was sitting on a time bomb. He had to deliberately invert everything and go after the people who knew this mystery in order to subvert it. But again, it's that whole free will versus God's will thing. If God's will is for you to have free will, then there's no conflict. If he wants you, if you're going to sin of your own free will and he's not going to stand in your way, where's the conflict? He's going to channel it. He's going to make it mean something, right? But he's going to let it happen. There is a mystery of iniquity. And so on some level, he wants all of this stuff to run its course because at the end, he's going to judge it. And at the end, there's going to be this finality and this separation. All of this, how they say perfect light casts out darkness, or dark light casts out darkness, perfect love casts out all fear, all of these things casting out others, casting out demons. And the idea is that once the demon is cast out, now you're in your right mind, like the demoniac there in Gadara or Gesa or whatever, that he was then in his right mind. Or the idea that the woman was cured of a fever and now she could work, right? She could serve them, right? Give them something to eat. He's always got a task for you once you're healed. That you have that clarity because the demon was cast out of you. You have the ability, like when he cured that guy of blindness, how he got into it with the scribes and the Pharisees there about, he healed me. You know what I'm saying? You understand that he opened my eyes, for crying out loud. You know what I'm saying? How do you not know what this means? You know what I'm saying?
And all they seem to care about was trifles. Like you said, they only care about things that don't matter. And you see that happening today with people. You tell them these things and they only care about things that don't matter. They talk about, well, there's no proof that it was carbon dated to 200 AD or something. They only care about when it was created.
But that's just it. You're not supposed to have to grapple with all those ins and outs. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not going to step on people's toes as far as that's concerned. I don't see where all of these rabbit holes that people are going down are the kinds of things that it's telling us to do. It's telling us to reveal it to them with our wisdom. It's telling those people at the end of time to show them the meaning of these words, to restore these books, etc. And those are the important things. And everything else, I think, at some point, all of these other truths will be revealed to us. There are lots of things that are on the horizon that are coming, but our immediate issue is that Babylon is about to fall and the kingdom of God is about to descend. And those of us who are in the know are being given this platform and this book and this knowledge and this insight. And that goes for all of us, everybody who understands something. Like I said, Jesus would very often give people commands after their healings. You know what I'm saying? That was the point I was trying to make. So whatever gift you have, whatever skill you have, whatever you have, is sort of incumbent upon you to contribute to the furtherance of this. That because it is in the multitude of the just that the world lies in its safety. In other words, that we as a group form a kind of united front in this world as a people who have been brought from darkness into light, that we all are reading from the same page, so to speak, from the same book, so to speak, with the mind of Christ and with the eyes that can see in the ear. You know what I'm saying? So I don't mean to talk around in circles, but basically, now that you know something, your contribution, I guess, is expected. You know, and so
Well,
with all of this,
I like that you talk about the things that you talk about, and you say them again, because like I said, and Carol said this too, coming from a Christian background, it's hard to see things the way that you see them, because you came from a blank slate, in a sense, because you didn't have religion growing up, and I believe it gave you that position to be who you are. And we need someone like you to be able to explain these things without that. Like, it's almost like I had like two filters I have to go through, but you don't have any filters, because you came from atheism instead of coming from Christianity, which was incorrect at the time when we were learning it as a child. It doesn't mean the verses were wrong. It just means that the concepts were wrong.
but that's fine, but it's from all of us too. I mean, the idea is to come alive. The idea is to become enlightened. You know, I could teach you how to ride a bike, but the two of us aren't going to ride the bike together. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be every one of us.
My point was, just learning is somewhat easy, but to unlearn and then have to learn was, for me, fairly difficult.
But that's what's so great about this, because it if once you get to the point where you recognize, for example, that the canon is an illusion, once you're able to read these books, now you're like, but why does this wall exist? Why does this barrier exist? You know, it clearly is the same message over here as it is over here. That's like enlightenment.
Right.
That's like the scales falling from your eyes, so to speak, your spiritual eyes, right? Where you're able then to dispense with the past. But I see, again, you're probably right. I've known a lot of people who come from other backgrounds, other religions, and they seem to struggle with all of this. You know, I was spared a lot of that largely. I was dragged to church way more than I wanted to be, you know, as a youth. But that being said, you know, I mean, I don't know. It just wasn't a problem for me. I guess it would be a problem for some people, you know, especially people who are involved with other people or who are invested in that religion. I mean, I can imagine it must be hard when your parents raised you a certain way, or where you're a member of a church and, you know, you're invested in that environment. You know, it's got to be hard to detangle yourself from all that, or to separate yourself from all that. I think probably that the best thing to do is to speak to people about the truths that they do accept, like, you know, place what they eat, what they place before you, and heal the sick among them approach. You know, they accept certain things. Find in the things that they accept that which maybe would cause them to think.
Well,
You know, maybe that would be a way.
speaking for myself, I always felt like it was just laws and regulations hammered into me, but I never felt love of God. I never felt that my whole life. I didn't understand how he could be so loving when it always seemed like fire and brimstone. But I know he has that aspect to him. But knowing what I know now about this and what he's preserved for us through the people that were slain for our sakes, I feel the love that he has for us, because he has a place for us as the elect, like you said.
Well, I think a lot of this is just the end of things, or the disappearance of things. Like, if you think about any illusion that you've ever seen through before, right? You're looking at something and you're like, I can't see it, and all of a sudden you have that eureka moment where it's like, oh yeah, now I see it. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody's seen through an illusion of some sort, you know, or even something that illusions are kind of interesting, because sometimes some of these things, you can look at it, you can absolutely know that what you're looking at is concentric circles, for example, but it looks like it's a spiral. You can't make your mind not see the spiral. You know what I'm saying? Or you're looking at something and it looks like the little black dots or whatever appearing, and everywhere you look, the black dots are somewhere else. And you can't make your mind not, you know, see that.
Right.
But you know, so there's what your perceptions of things are, right? And then there's what you know. So sometimes even if you don't see something, you can see through it, or you can know it, or you could find some other way of looking at it where the illusion kind of dissipates or disappears or whatever. But again, not to sound like a broken record, but this is really about snapping out of a false reality. And if
Right.
you can snap other people out of it, it's going to probably be on the basis of showing them things that they do believe rather than harping on things that they don't believe. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this book of Enoch is promised to us in the end times, and it is specifically for our times. But that's another one of those things. If you can get them from, say, Jude and what they believe about that, because again, he's calling it ancient, he's calling it prophetic, right? It doesn't matter where you are as a Christian, you have to grapple with these things. You know, why are you hiding this, for example, or why does the church shy away from these topics, so to speak? You know, why do they kind of have to do the, you know, the apocrypha shuffle every time they come across something that goes against their teaching? Is because their teaching prevents people from seeing things, right? Like you go through the book of Hebrews, you go through the chapter of faith. Why is it located in the chapter of faith about the why is the allusion to the assumption of Isaiah or the
Mhm.
martyrdom of Isaiah
Yep.
alluded to in the chapter of faith? Why is it in that particular chapter? Or
Right.
why is it that the allusion to Second Maccabees about the woman receiving her own in heaven, why does that happen to exist in the chapter of faith? Right.
Mhm.
So then if you say, well, do you believe that this is real? Why is it referencing these things over here? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because it you're telling me you can't make it all the way through chapter 11, you can't make it all the way through the chapter of faith before you're throwing things out and saying, I don't believe that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. You know what I'm saying? If a person is sincere, they're going to want to be internally consistent. They don't want to have that dissonance.
Well,
You
they
know,
kind of say, don't they say that, like, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if it's true. I'm just conjecture, but doesn't it say like that Hebrews was possibly written by James, and Jesus said, if you have any questions, go to James the just. You know what I'm saying? So like he said, go to
there's a
James for the answer. People go to James and they don't even accept the answers that he gives them, which would point them to these books that were removed. That's how I see it. I don't know if that's the way it is. But.
I mean, I guess the bottom line is it really boils down to it. Nobody really knows who wrote the book, the book of Hebrews.
Mhm.
But the thing about it is, like, for example, I just start from the point of view. I don't question anything that's in the canon. You know, I don't. I start out with that,
Right.
and again, I look at what something says. You know, when um, people question Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, like, who are you that we should believe you or whatever? Tell us, why we should believe you. And he's like, well, you don't know who I am from the words that I speak,
Right.
right?
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
So the proper way to understand him is through the words that he speaks. So if the logos is speaking to you and you understand that language of the logos, right? Again, that's your off ramp, so to speak, from traditional Christianity, because traditional Christianity, like I said, is going to sweep a lot of this stuff under the rug, or they're going to explain it away, or they're going to ignore it altogether.
Mhm.
You might have a Bible where you're reading Jude 14 and 15 and it says nothing about it. My first experience with that particular thing was I was reading my Bible and I looked at the cross reference and it redirected me back to Genesis, when
Right.
in fact it by doing so, it de facto, whether that was intentional or not, de facto it didn't tell me that it was quoting the apocryphal book of Enoch or the pseudepigraphal book of Enoch or
Right.
whatever. It wasn't telling me that that's what it was quoting. It was as if it was like lying to me and saying, oh, it's over here, and
Yeah.
parenthetically not over
Or
here.
even worse. I think I have the Dartmouth Bible from like 1960 or something, or one of my Bibles from the recently made, and it removed multiple verses. I told you about this. It removed a bunch of verses from Jude. How can you take out verses from Jude that talk about the fallen angels? That's directly what God said in Enoch just now that we read, is like, when you write down all of my words truthfully, then you will get this. Okay, well, that means
Mhm.
that right now they're not written down truthfully in all aspects, because we have so many
Well,
different.
yeah, because there is a payoff. The thing about it, and the payoff comes. See, the payoff is when you get these books and you get these mysteries and you get all this stuff. That's what it's talking about in 104 and 105. It's like, this is what's going to be given to you, right? again, when he launches his word against you, you know, it's kind of like a bow that's drawn, and any minute now it's gonna let go, and it's gonna be fired against you. You know what I'm saying? And it's not gonna miss, right? And so this, you can understand how metaphorically this is like that. You know, it's loaded, and it's cocked and loaded, so to speak. It's ready to go. You know what I'm saying? And it is a weapon that is not going to miss its mark. And when you can articulate it, that puts you in a position of strength. And yes, that was what they were so afraid of early on. But if you can convince people, there's so many Christians out there. There's so many people who are sitting on the fence and stuff. And this gives them something to see, you know, if this becomes a movement. You know, like I'm not to, again, not to sound like a broken record. I always assumed when I was young and dumb and first into all this stuff, I just sort of assumed that this would just explode. I thought, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is so provocative. It's so self-explanatory, and it's so different. And yet there it is. You know what I'm saying? It's so easy to show. It's so easy to demonstrate. It's so consistent. It's so across the board. And yet, I'm not sure why, but again, I think timing is some of it. You know, I keep telling myself this stuff can't stay silent forever, because it is there, and things are happening, and things are moving. And at some point, will I be a catalyst? Will you be a catalyst? I don't know. You know, I don't care if I'm a footnote in all of this. It just needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? It just, people need to do something about this, you know, because it's there to be done with. This is a weapon that has been given to us. This is a treasure that has been given to us. This is a message that has been given to us. This is a blessing, the words of blessing that has been given to us, just like it says right up front. It is for us to use on the day of tribulation. Why would it be given to us if it wasn't for some reason? You know what I'm saying? Why would it be held back until the end if the recovery of this knowledge that was lost, this treasure that was lost, you know, and then found, you know, why would it even exist to us? You know, it's amazing that it exists to us down to our day. You know, it was only the Ethiopic church that held on to this book, and without that, we wouldn't have had it. But, you know, it stands in their tradition pretty much unbroken from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? So there's no reason to doubt it or to question it or whatever. It's there, and it's a part of our Christian heritage, you know, and it's there to be used. And again, the idea is to give you eyes to see. I don't want anybody to believe anything. Don't believe anything I say. Just look at it. You know, you can't see what I see if you can't recognize what I recognize. And I just think you're not looking hard enough, because it is there. You know, and the reason why you can answer my sentences, and the reason why you can say, oh, I look over in this book and it says exactly the same thing as you're saying, right? That's because you're in these books enough to know that all of this stuff's talking about the same stuff. All of this stuff's talking about this stuff. You see it, you recognize it, you hear it, it lives in you. You know what I'm saying? And if it can live in me, and it can live in you, and it can live in a few people that you know, right? And I, you know, I mean, it's there, you know, and that's the thing. It exists, and it's there for us to use. And I think we need to start taking advantage of it. I think we need to start looking at it for what it is, and that is to say, you know, the belief in something canonical like Jude brings us to in this direction. The belief in something canonical like Hebrews chapter 11 brings us in this direction. The references to the place in Sheol where the rich man and Lazarus was by Jesus leads us in this direction.
Or Revelation 118. Revelation 118, I am the one who has the keys of hell and death. Okay, where did Jesus get the keys of hell and death? Because it doesn't tell you in the canon where he got them. It tells you about the gates of brass and that he destroyed them and all that stuff, but it doesn't say, when did Jesus go down to Hades and break the gates of brass? The stories in the Gospel of Nicodemus that they removed end of 15th century. And this is what I'm saying, is they just keep taking books out, so you don't have the answer. So if nobody,
yeah, and for anybody who questions that, I mean, all you got to do is read Matthew. You know, Matthew 27. I forget the verse. It's kind of late in the chapter where it talks about the dead came to life in Jerusalem and showed themselves to many people there, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's a canonical reference to that, right? So you know. So I mean, this isn't just some weird off the wall thing that you Yeah, I mean, it's in the canon, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a canonical statement. Matthew 27:50. So I don't know. So it's late in the chapter. It's a really long chapter, but it's there. And so that's a witness to that as well. He went to preach to the spirits in prison. And again, like everything else, that is also metaphorical space. There's an interpretation and parable in all of that. But that being said, it's like what we're talking about. There are all of these connections to these events. There's all of these bridges, if you will, all these doors that open to these things.
Yeah, and it's amazing because this is what I do sometimes when people say things on like TikTok and stuff like that, and I'm not on there a ton, but when I'm on there, a lot of people say great swelling words against the Most High by denying his word, and it says clearly that they would do that. They say, oh, that's not canon, or no, that wasn't allowed to be scripture, we don't accept that because it's not dated correctly, or like just all these stupid things that don't make any sense, just like the Jews did to Jesus when he was on the earth. They came up, oh, he wasn't born of a virgin, oh, he wasn't this, oh, he wasn't that. They create all these swelling words against the word and against Jesus, and that's how you see the parallels.
Well, as a former atheist, okay, I used to be a little bit on the annoying side. I was sort of anti-Christian, and a lot of what I thought was that that it was just fairy tales, that it was just stories, and how could anybody believe any of this stuff when it's so outside of your ordinary experience? You don't see people being raised from the dead. You don't see people's eyes being opened after they've been blind since birth. You don't see any of this stuff. And then that's what the Jews were saying too. They were like, nobody's seen this kind of thing. This is so extraordinarily out of the ordinary. Nobody's talked like this man has. Nobody's healed like this man. So he's a real aberration from people of their time and their whatever. But he shows himself from time to time. And what I'm saying is that right now in our time, he's showing himself to us by means of his promise, by means of his word. And that we, as being his members, we are his eyes, we are his ears, we are his mouthpieces, we are his hands, we are his feet. We are, I'm saying, we are extensions of him. And that jives with what Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas. I myself will become that man, right? In other words, if you lend yourself to the Spirit, you will become a member of that. And that's open to all of us, at the end of time. That's promised to all of us. We all have a role to play in this. Everybody out there, you got to stop thinking it's somebody else. It's somebody else. It's you too. You have to contribute. You have to do something. And that's not me telling you. That's the imperative. So whatever you say, whatever you like, whatever you think about me, that's irrelevant. That's the imperative. Do something,
Right.
and then everybody has to do something.
I agree. Well, we're at like 2 hours. I think it's up to you if you want to keep going, but I just like to give you the option to, quit at 2
I
hours.
think this is a good start for right now.
Perfect.
I don't know what I'm going to delve into next, but I wanted to kind of just go over some of the basic stuff about what this is and where it's going and what the paradigm is that you should see it through. Like I said before, I'm going to try to approach this as a parable in the way that I understand it. Obviously, I don't understand everything. We are all his members. We all have our own dispensations. We all have our own insights. I think that we will largely be in agreement with one another because the same spirit, the same eyes, the same ears, or whatever, are going to be coming alive in all of us. That these things are objectively there. And again, I'm not going to dwell on the physical level of things because I want to illustrate what this book means to us in our day and in our relevance, and as a parable, what it means, and not necessarily what it meant in its particular time, because
Right.
that can be a discussion of its own and on its own. You can get into the ancient world and all that. That's not going to be my focus. My focus is, because this book is meant for us at the end of the age, it has to be communicated to us on the level in which it was meant to be useful to us in our age, and that
Right.
everything else would be a distraction from that. And so I just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork for that. This is about the restoration of mysteries. This is about the restoration of these scriptures. This is about the exposition of things that were hitherto not seen, where that were kind of dark, that were kind of hidden, and why it is that this book has been given to us. What is its usefulness? And so I think we touched on all that stuff. What is its usefulness? What is its purpose?
As we head out, Robert, do you mind if I read for a moment from the Wisdom of Solomon?
Sure.
All right. So the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6, in praise of wisdom. Hear then, you kings, take this to heart, lords of the wide world. Learn this lesson. Give ear, you rulers of the multitude, who take pride in the myriads of your people. Your authority was bestowed on you by the Lord. Your power comes from the Most High. You will probe your actions and scrutinize your intentions. Though you are servants appointed by the king, you have not been upright judges. You have not maintained the law or guided your steps by the will of God. Swiftly and terribly he will descend on you, for judgment falls relentlessly on those in high places. The lowest may find pity and forgiveness, but those in power will be called powerfully to account. For he who is master of all is obsequious to none and shows no deference to greatness. Small and great alike are of his making, and all are under his providence equally. But it is for those who wield authority that he reserves the sternest inquisition. To you then who have absolute power I speak, in hope that you may learn wisdom and not go astray. Those who in holiness have kept a holy course will be accounted holy, and those who have learnt this lesson will be able to make their defense. Therefore, be eager to hear me. Long for my teaching, and you will learn. Wisdom shines brightly and never fades. She is readily discerned by those who love her, and by those who seek her she is found. She is quick to make herself known to all who desire knowledge of her. He who rises early in search of her will not grow weary in his quest, for he will find her seated at his door. To meditate on her is prudence, and it is perfect shape, and in its perfect shape, and to be vigilant in her cause is the short way to freedom from care. She herself searches far and wide for those who are worthy of her, and on their daily path she appears to them with kindly intent, meeting them halfway in all of their purposes. The true beginning of wisdom is the desire to learn, and a concern for learning means love towards her. The love of her means the keeping of her laws. To keep her laws is a warrant of immortality, and immortality brings a person near to God. Thus, desire for wisdom leads you to the kingdom. If therefore you value your thrones and your scepters, you rulers of the nations, you must honor wisdom so that you may reign forever. What wisdom is and how she came into being, I shall tell you. I shall not conceal her mysteries from you. I shall trace out her course from her first beginnings and bring the knowledge of her into the light of day. I shall not leave the truth untold. Pale envy will not travel in my company, for the spiteful will have no share in wisdom. Wise men in plenty are the world's salvation, and a prudent king is the sheet anchor of his people. Therefore, learn what I have to teach you, and it will be for your good. And that's an apocryphal book not included in our current canon. So I just want
Yeah,
to share.
and for those of you who are interested where the armor of God teaching came from, that it most closely resembles the account given in the Wisdom of Solomon. But just playing off of one thing on there, the immortality. That's something that's going to happen to the elect at the end of time. They are going to transform. It's going to be like what you're seeing now is sort of the transformation of the mind and the spirit and whatnot. But it's going to become more pronounced at some point. It's going to take on a more how should I say, more definite um, meaning at some point in the future. But that being said, um, the idea that wisdom leads to immortality, it kind of riffs off of the teaching in the Gospel of Philip, where it talks about in this world you do not become the things that you see. Like you can see something, but you don't become that. But in the world to come, in the world of the spirit, your spirit becomes that which it sees. And
Mhm.
so if you seek the true spirituality, that will change who you are. That will change you viscerally. So you become that which you see. So if you see the transcendence, for example, you will learn to become transcendent because
Mhm.
you will recognize that as true. So you become what you see. So by all means, open up your eyes and open up your ears and learn from wisdom and
Right.
grow from that, and then you'll be able to, like, you see what I see. and you'll see what,
Right.
Jared sees. You'll see those things, So, I
And
mean,
Solomon says that wisdom is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So by having which is the third testament, but it's also the Spirit within us when you understand these things.
well,
And
and it is the Father, it is the Son, it is the Holy Spirit, it is all three of those things.
right,
It's there's a manifestation of the Son, and then there's what the Son brings forth, and that all of those prophecies are there to be fulfilled when you recognize that. Or even like it says in the Epistle of Dogmas, when you come to understand the mind that is at work in the universe, and you begin to dilate on its mysteries, and you recognize that you exist within that world, you when you hear this stuff, you recognize that, oh yeah, you exist in a world where God is in control. It
right,
becomes real to you, and you can walk in faith, and you can walk in knowledge, and you can walk in victory, so to speak. Not that you won't have opposition, not that you won't be tried, because if you're not tried, you're a bastard child. But that
right,
being said, you're going to be put through it a little bit. But the thing is, he's there to be as a blessing to us, and to, to show us the light of the truth. you
right.
know so spread the word, get out there and start manifesting it, show it, share this out if nothing else. But I mean, do something. You have to manifest this, because your spirit is going to be, how shall I say, mixed in with your deeds. Your
Right.
intentions are going to be measured in all of that you do. You know what I'm saying? And so there won't be anything that you did that will be forgotten. Why not do things that will be memorialized forever? You know what
Right.
I'm saying? You have that
Because I think that all
opportunity
the
now
time.
that you know that it's a fact, now that you understand and recognize it and see it.
Well, Robert, may I pray and then we can head out?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this wonderful day. Thank you for letting Robert and I have this time to speak together and to go over your word. I just thank you for this opportunity and for teaching us all of this wisdom. And I thank you so much for Jesus for dying on the cross for our sins. And I pray that during these times that are coming, that you please allow more workers to go into the field to reap this great harvest. And I pray that we might be able to preach these things to the people that will listen. And I pray that you soften people's hearts so they might understand this stuff and give them eyes to see and ears to hear, Lord. In your precious name, I pray.